So I'm aware that a lot of people like me are unhappy. What we've learned from this is that people pay too much attention to mainstream media. And I say that like it's a bad thing, but it shouldn't be. That's what the media is there for. It's supposed to inform the public. So the first point I guess I want to make is that the media needs to be held accountable for deliberately misleading the public. Sure, the BBC spent the last 3 weeks coming up to the election calling out the Tories on their bullshit, but they spent the months before that propagating misinformation that the papers had been starting. Now, the important word here is misleading. They weren't lying. They were twisting the truth and using clever wording to forward their own ideals. I mean, it's no mystery that the owners of the major papers are friends with, indebted to, or have financial interests with the Tory party. Calling Corbyn a terrorist sympathiser is technically kind of true, but it's an emotional response and it's misleading. For his entire political career, Corbyn has worked towards peaceful resolutions to conflicts. During the Troubles, he was talking to leaders or backers of what we would have called the opposition in an effort to make peace. In 2001, he voted against banning 21 militant groups from the UK, because if you ban them, you can't talk to them. By the way, if you want to find anything out about this ban, you'll have to dig, like I did, surprisingly hard, because if you Google search anything to do with ban on Al-Qaeda, you will only get news articles from places like the BBC and the Telegraph about the outrage that some people had because some people from the Labour Party voted against it. They don't tell you the year of the vote, they don't tell you the result of the vote, they don't even fucking tell you the name of the bill or legislation. If you are interested, I think what they're referring to is the Terrorism Act of 2000, but I'm still not sure. Clearly, the ban worked wonders, by the way. Every war in modern history has been ended by people sitting down and talking. People who support the peace process like Corbyn are trying to do that before all the people die. The media called this tacit support of terrorism, but if you really think that Osama bin Laden was thinking, well, I wasn't sure about our attack on the World Trade Center by flying a plane into it, but now that we have the support of a random anti-war Labour backbencher, now I have renewed confidence, then you're a fucking idiot. The other heckin' chunk of a story that the papers are guilty of perpetuating is the claims of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky. There's no real anti-Semitism claims until about April 2018. The tricky part is that a lot of Labour Party members are anti-Zionism. Zionism, by the way, if you're curious, which you should be, was the creation of a Jewish state in the ancient land of Israel, and now is the cultivation and protection of that area. This is a very basic representation of the problem, but the problem is, or was, is that there were already people living there that have now been pushed out into a state that we now call Palestine. Israel, thanks to us and America, is considerably more well-armed than Palestine and has a history of hitting them with drone strikes that always kill innocents. Drone strikes are bad. I've mentioned Noam Chomsky's support of Corbyn in a previous video, but there was another video that for the life of me I can't find. People who watch this might know which one I'm talking about, and if you find it, please send me the link so I can put it in the thing below. Honestly, if I try and search anything about Corbyn and anti-Semitism, it makes my laptop overheat. A prominent Jewish figure stated that there is a serious problem with right-wing anti-Semitism in Europe, and what these, as he referred them to as ridiculous claims of anti-Semitism in the left-wing Labour Party are doing is distracting people from the actual threat to the Jewish population. It's also impossible to find out who actually started these claims, but in the previously mentioned interview, the Jewish man had a theory that the claims of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party will have, and already have, created a feeling of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party because those smears have had, and did have, a huge impact on Labour's support during the election. Miriam Margolyes was also asked for her opinion on Jeremy Corbyn and anti-Semitism in the Labour Party because she is a Jew and is a prominent figure. So at the premiere of Call the Midwife, She is quoted as saying, "I think anti-Semitism is throughout the English political system. I don't think Labour have a monopoly on anti-Semitism." But honestly, who can support a man who supports anti-Semites? Who created a character called Sammy Katz, who is portrayed as a snake-like, unscrupulous Jewish businessman who exploits immigrant workers for profit? Or who publishes articles from Tacky Theodorokopoulos, who is a proud anti-Semite, said that black people have a lower IQ than white people, and said that Enoch Powell is a great man. Or a man who talks about Jewish oligarchs who use their presence in the media to fiddle fixtures to fix elections in their favour. If you haven't already guessed, because I've used this to hilarious effect in my previous videos, I'm actually talking about Boris Johnson. Amazing how none of this actually came up in the election, isn't it? Also worth mentioning, the Jewish members of Corbyn's constituency, who've known him for 30 years, have supported him in his non-anti-Semitism. Non-anti-Sem? Is that just Semitism? Whatever. The worst part is what happens next, because the Labour Party will internally talk about their future and say that obviously a left-wing approach doesn't work, despite the fact that they didn't actually get to try it, because elections are more now about winning than actually enacting change. They will ignore the fact that only 1 in 5 Britons who were able to vote actually voted for the Conservatives. Out of the 55 million people who were able to vote, 8 million didn't register, 23 million didn't vote, and 18 million didn't vote for Boris, as opposed to the 13.9 million that did. Because fuck actual proportional representation in politics, am I right? Also, did you know that if only under 25s voted, then the Conservatives wouldn't have had a single seat in the election? Bagel, 0. Whereas if only over 65s voted, i.e. the people that won't actually have to deal with the mess afterwards from the results of the election, sorry I threw up in my mouth a little bit, the Labour Party would have still had 32 seats, but the rest was blue. So what do we do now? We watch the Labour Party, see what they're up to. If they return to Blairite-style, conservative-light branding politics, then we move our vote to the Greens. And as much as I hate to say it, see what the Lib Dems are up to, because even though they betrayed us, in the past, and even though Joe Swinson was a moron, they are supposed to be the party for the left, even if they forget that. But probably just stick with the Greens. Make them a viable party again. Make them a threat. Even though by the time the next general election comes around, it's probably going to be too late to fix it. That reminds me, don't give up hope. We have to maintain hope for people who can't hope for themselves. Also, remind people of the need to vote. If you want to take a personal protest, then go in and spoil your ballot. Draw a dick on it. Don't just sit at home doing sweet fuck all, thinking that you're making a difference, because you're not. You're just being ignored. I didn't think about a way to end this video. By the way, if you want to find anything out about this van, you will have to dig, like I did. Surprise, I said van again.